Hey folks, in this episode I'm going to be showing you how to make this seamless animation loop of this rocket orbiting the moon. It's going to be a relatively easy tutorial to follow along. It's not too technical. As you can see, it's based on toon shaders opposed to using physical based rendering. To model the moon, we're going to be using geometry nodes. To make the rocket, I'll show you some basic modeling techniques, a simple shader for the stars. For the animation, we're going to be using keyframes, empties and modifiers, and we'll set them to offset to make it look like the engine is stalling on the rocket. So without further ado, let's get to it. So the first thing I'm going to do, delete everything. So I'm going to select all and hit delete. We've got a clean canvas to work from. I'm also going to enable my screencast keys so you can see exactly what I'm clicking down here. So we're going to be using the eevee render engine for this one. You can switch to eevee. I'm also going to set up scene output. We're going to set it to 30 frames per second. Down here, I'm going to set this screen to geometry nodes. Select geometry nodes. We'll just drag this across here. And I guess the first thing I'll do, let's just add a mesh cube. With the cube selected, I'm going to add a new geometry node tree. What I'll do, control, right click and drag. If you haven't got that function, go over to here, edit, preferences, and we'll go to add-ons and then type in node. And then enable a node wrangler. And when that's selected, I can hit control, hold down the right mouse button and drag, and then it will kill the selection. I then drag this over here. I'm then going to add Shift A, add primitive, which should be mesh, primitive, and I'll go for icosphere. Alternatively, you can just go into search and type in icosphere. We'll select that, we'll add that to the geometry output there. I'm going to choose 3 subdivisions. I'm then going to Shift A, search, extrude mesh. So we'll add this in here, and as you can see, this is extruding each individual face. And then I'll add scale elements, Shift A, search, scale elements, and we'll add that into here. And all that does is scale the icosphere as a whole, but we're going to be scaling it by selection. So we just want the top to be scaled. As you can see, what it's doing there is scaling the tips. And then I'm going to extrude mesh again. I'm going to just select this extrude mesh here. I'm going to hit Shift D and then I'll drag that over to here. We're also going to be selecting this top element here onto the selection. As you can see, it's extruded once again. From there, click scale elements. We'll bring that into here. I'll just bring this down to 0.7 for now. You might need to change this in a bit. And then search for dual mesh for the selection on this one. How would I do this? So I want to scale each of these elements, but I want to scale them randomly. So add a random value, search, random, and select the random value. And then let's say from -1 to 1, and we'll keep that as a float, and then we'll add that onto the selection. As you can see, they're scaling randomly now from -1 to 1. Let's just have a random seed. I'll duplicate that random value. Let's say we'll have it 0.1 to 0.8. We'll keep that as a float, and then maybe add that as a map range. We'll plug this into the scale offset, and then we'll map range that. Search, map range, we'll chuck that in there. We're going to keep it as a float. Maybe with these 2 values it will be 0.1, 0.8 and 0.075, 0.15. Okay, this will become a controller for the craters. And maybe we can set this to the scale on the scale elements node as well, directly from here. When you've got your node wrangler, if I hold down Shift and then right click and strike, it adds these little control points here. So just for ease of reading, I'm going to do that again. Then we'll drag this across and we can see exactly where that's going. I'm going to add another random value and we're going to plug that into the offset of the extrude mesh. So I might just duplicate this random value here, and this is going to remain a float. We'll go -0.05 by -0.5. Okay, I'll then put this into the offset of the scale. You can see the craters starting to form here. Let's just add a subdivision surface so we can see what we're doing. So then I hit Shift A, add, search for subdivision surface, and we'll place that there, and maybe I'll give it a level 3 for now. So as you can see, it's starting to take formation now. Let's just rename the geometry node system. So I'm going to select this over here and rename it to moon. I'll copy that, Control C, and I'll just paste it into here, Control V. I'll also paste it into here, Control V, so we know what it is. Let's add a material. We'll call the material moon as well, so Control V, so it's all coherent with each other. As you can see, it's not smooth, so in order to do that, we just add a node, Shift A, and search for set shade smooth. And we'll place that at the end to see the material. Let's just go to our material. So if I set this to red, we can't see it. So then in the geometry nodes, we go to search and type in set and set material. And then we select that material, which is moon. Now we've got our material. We'll alter the materials a bit later on. I might just change the colour of this for now, just to a light blue. So what we have here, these two values are the actual size of the hole. So if I reduce the max, then it will reduce the maximum size of each hole. The same as the minimum size of the smallest holes. I might take the max down 1 and then maybe the min 0.05. These values here, this is the height of the craters, as you can see, and then the rim height, and then this is the inner height, and then these two should be the depths of the hole, as you can see there. So you can adjust that for the look that you're going for. So I'm going to bring it down to around about there. Okay, with the first lot of subdivisions on your icosphere, this determines how many holes will appear. So obviously, the less subdivisions, the less holes. So you can go for a stylized look, you can go for more holes. The subdivision surface, that's just how smooth your final moon is going to be. For render, I'll probably set that to 4, but for working, I'll just set it to level 3. You can set it to whatever your computer can handle. Okay, so that's the moon. The next part is to model the rocket, which is going to be a fairly straightforward process. So let's get to that. First thing I'll do, so I'll just drag this down. The next thing I'm going to do is hide the moon and then hit Shift A, add mesh and cylinder. We'll open up this menu here and then I'm going to select 12 vertices and then let's make it a radius of, let's say, 0.5. Maybe we'll give it a depth of 2.5, maybe 3 actually. From here, I'm going to tab into edit mode, I'm going to hit Control R and we'll add a loop cut here. I'll then click that into place, I'll scale this out to around about there and then hit Control B and we'll bevel that, and then I'll add some loop cuts in here, so around about 8 loop cuts. Okay, we'll click that into place. For the top, I'm just going to select this face here, 3 for face select, 1 for vertice select and 2 for edge select. So I'm just going to hit number 3, I'm going to click this face here, I'm going to hit I for inset. I'll do that one more time and I'll do the same to the bottom. So I'm going to hit I inset and I inset again. I'll then shift select this top face, so I've got both faces selected. I'll hit X and we'll delete faces. Let's add the fins. So I'm just going to hit Shift A, add mesh, and we'll go for cube. I'll go into edit mode, I'll select all, I'm going to hit SX.1. That's still a bit thick, so SX.5. Okay, we'll hit numpad 3 to go into side view. If you haven't got a numpad, you can always select this gizmo here. So I want to view it from the X axis. I'll then hit SY.5. Hit enter, and then I'm going to hit G, Y, and I'll just drag this out to around about there. So then I'll go into face select mode, hit number 3, I'll select this face, go into side view, and then I'm just going to drag this down, hit G, Z, we'll drag it down to around about there. I'll then select this edge, it's number 2, or edge mode, select this edge, go into side view, I'm going to hit G, Z, we're just going to bring this down to around about there. It's still a bit large for my liking, so I'm going to select all, and then I'm going to hit S, Y, and I'm going to scale it on the y-axis, and then hit G, Y, hold down control, and I'm just going to snap it to around about there. I'm going to tab out of edit mode, I'm going to hit Shift A, apply the scale. I'll do the same with this rocket body here, Shift A, apply the scale. We're going to add subdivision surface on these objects, so let's just add some edge loops as container loops. For example, with the rocket body selected, I'll go into my modifiers over here, I'm going to add a subdivision surface. Alternatively, I can hit Control 2 and it will add a subdivision surface at level 2. I'll go into edit mode, go into front view, and I'm going to hit Shift R and I'm going to add a loop cut here, slide it up, and we'll do the same here. Shift R, add a loop cut, and we'll slide it out, and that's just to tighten that edge up here. I'm going to do the same for the bottom. So Shift R, we'll add an edge loop there, Shift R, and we'll add one here. Okay, we'll do the same for this object. So with this object selected, I'm going to hit Control 2, which adds a subdivision surface at level 2. I'll go into edit mode, and then go into side view, I'm going to hit Control R, which adds a loop cut. I'm then going to hit E and then click F. It will flip the selection to inline it with whichever edge you want. So we'll do this one first. So I'm going to tab that into place, Control R, I'm going to hit E and F. We'll add that there. We'll also add another one here. So I'll just slide this across and then maybe we'll add one up here too. So around about there. Okay, so now with this object selected, I'm going to hit Z, shade smooth. I'll select the rocket body, hit Z, shade smooth. I'll select this fin here. I'm going to hit Shift D, R, Z, 90 to rotate by 90 degrees. I'm going to do that 2 more times. Shift D, R, Z, 90. And one more time. Shift D, R, Z, 90. Now I'm going to select all of these by holding down Shift and left clicking, and then I'm going to hit Control J to join. So now that's all one mesh. I'll then Shift left click select the rocket body, and I'll hit Control J, and now it joins it onto the rocket body. The top will be pretty straightforward. I'm going to add a cylinder. So Shift A, add mesh cylinder. We don't want the same settings as before. Maybe this one will be a radius of 2 by 2. We'll keep it at 12 vertices. I then go into edit mode. I'm going to hit S, Shift Z, and that will scale it on every axis except for the Z axis. So around about there. I'm going to go into X-ray view with this button here, and then I'm going to box select all these top vertices, and then I'm going to hit S, Control. I'm going to snap that in place to around about there, and then I'm going to box select these bottom vertices. I'm going to drag them up, G, Z, drag them up to this origin point here. I then hit G, Z, and we'll grab that and we'll snap it up to the top to around about there. You can have a bit of overlap. Okay, all these bottom vertices, once again, I'm going to scale them down, S, hold down Control, and to round off the top, I'm going to hit 3 for face select. Let's just go out of X-ray view. I'm going to hit numpad 1 for front view. I'm then going to hit E, Z to extrude on the Z axis. I'm going to drag it up to about there, and hit S to scale it down, and then I'm going to look at the top. I then hit X and we'll delete the faces. I then go to vertice select, and if I hold down Shift and out and then select in between these 2 vertices, that will select the edge loop, and then from there I can hit Control F and choose grid fill. I'm going to go into top view. It's not inlined, so before I click anything I'm going to change the offset until it kind of lines up with my camera. That will do. Okay, I'm happy with that. Underneath, when we add a subdivision surface, so if I hold down Shift and select the rocket, then I'm going to hit Control J to join. As you can see, it's turned into a big mess, so we're going to have to add some edge loops here, container loops. So I'm going to hit Control R, and we'll drag this down to around about here, and then this bottom face, I'm then going to hit I for inset. I'll hit I again, and maybe one more time. So I'm going to hit Z, shade smooth. Control A, apply scale. So the next part, thruster. So Shift A, add mesh, and we'll go for cylinder. And then tab into edit mode. I'm going to hit S, Shift Z, and we'll scale this down, and then tab out of edit mode. We'll hit G, Z. We'll just bring this down to around about there. I'm going to go into edit mode again. S, Shift Z, and we'll just scale this down to around about here. Maybe a bit smaller. Okay. And then hit number 1 for vertice select mode. I'm going to box select these and hit G, Z, and we'll just drag this up to around about there. And then I'm going to hit S, and we're going to scale this up. Okay. Let's get rid of these faces. I'm going to go to face select mode. We'll select the bottom face. I'm going to hit X, and we're going to delete face. And the same as with this face here, X, and we'll delete the face. If I just quickly tab out of edit mode, I'm going to select the rocket. I'm going to go to edit mode, and then I'm going to hit number 1, and we'll shift out and select in between these 2 vertices to select this edge loop. And then I'm going to hit Control numpad 7 to go into bottom view, and then I'm going to hit Control F, and we're going to select grid fill. Okay, so it just fills that in. Tab out of edit mode. We'll then reselect this booster, hit Control A and apply the scale. And then we'll go to our modifiers and we'll select solidify. Okay, we'll do even thickness, and we'll just increase this till it's a half decent thickness. Okay, it's quite thick. Maybe I'm going to decrease the size of this actually. I'm going to tab it into edit mode, go to X-ray view. I'm going to select all these vertices. I'm going to hit S, Control. We'll just bring that down slightly. Tab out of edit mode, deselect the X-ray view. And then I'm going to apply this modifier. So then from here, I'm going to hit Control 2 to add a subdivision surface at level 2. And we're just going to add a couple of loop cuts to tighten this up, and we'll add another loop cut and we'll tighten this up down here, and maybe we could add one in the middle of this rim here, Control R, and maybe on the inside Control R, and we'll bring this down to around about there. Okay, tab out of edit mode, go into front view, and I might just hit G, Z, and we'll drag this up until there's a bit of intersection there. Okay, and hit Z, shade smooth, Control R, apply the scale again, and then Shift left click, select the rocket, and then hit Control J to join the mesh. So now this is all one mesh. Let's do the windows next. So I'm going to tab into edit mode, I'm going to select face select mode, so I'm going to select this face, and we'll do the same all the way around. Okay, so they're all selected. Now I'm going to hit I. We'll bring this down to around about there. And then I'm going to hit I once more. And then up here, I'm going to change it to individual origins. And then I'm going to right click and we're going to extrude faces along normals. Just a tiny bit. And then right click and extrude face along normals one more time. And then tab out of edit mode. And there's our windows. Now let's do the flames. Hit Shift A, add mesh, and we'll go for circle. You can't see it at the moment, so we've got to go into top view. That's numpad 7, or you can hit this Z up here. So when we're in top view, before clicking out of anything, we're going to change this to 12 vertices, and then go into edit mode. We'll go to vertices select mode, so that's number 1. I'll go into front view, and I'm going to drag this down, so hit E, Z, we'll drag it down to round about there. Okay, every other single vertice, we're going to select these. So I'm just shift left click selecting, and then I'm going to hit G, Z, and we'll just drag these up to around about there. Okay, I'll then go into X-ray view. I'm going to box select all these bottom vertices. We'll change the pivot point back to median point. Then I'm going to hit S, and we'll just drag those down to around about there. I'm then going to duplicate that whole thing. Shift D. I'm going to hit S, Shift Z to scale on every axis but the Z axis. We'll bring that down to around about there. I'll hit P to separate, and we'll choose selection to separate by the selection. Tab out of edit mode, choose that inner piece, and then we're going to go into edit mode. We'll select all these bottom vertices and we'll hit G, Z, and we'll just drag those down to around about there. Maybe we'll scale them in a little bit more, and now we'll select all the pieces and go into top view, and we want to rotate this, so I'm going to hit R, Z, hold down control, and we'll rotate it around about there. Tab it out of edit mode. Now I'm going to hit Shift left click select the other flame, and then hit Control J, which joins the geometry. Let's just hit G, Z. We'll bring this down so we can see what we're doing. We'll scale it as well, so S. We'll scale it down to around about there, maybe S, Z, so scale it on the Z axis, and then I'm going to hit Control A, apply the scale. I'm now going to go into edit mode. I'm going to select these bottom vertices. I'm going to hit Control L, and that will select the whole inner selection. I'm going to hit R, Z, and we're just going to rotate them round so it's completely centered on the offset. Tab out of edit mode, hit Control 2 to add a subdivision at level 2. I might even add a solidify modifier. So go to modifiers and add a solidify. We'll increase that thickness. We'll drag this above the subdivision surface. So now I'll go into edit mode. Make sure your X-ray view's turned on. I'm going to select all these vertices up here. I'm going to hit E, Z, and we'll just drag that up by a small amount. So about there. Hit G, Z, and we'll drag this up so it's inside here, and maybe S, Z, and we'll just increase the length. G, Z, and you just shimmy it in there the best you can. I'm going to hit Z, shade smooth. We're going to be displacing this, but we only want the tips to be displaced. We'll just prepare that now. So we're going to vertex group. I'm then going to go to X-ray view, box select these bottom ones, shift box select these ones, and we're going to add it to a vertex group, and we'll call it displace. You can call it whatever you want. It doesn't have to be called displace. This is just for ease of use. And then I'm going to click assign. So now all these parts are part of that vertex group. I'll then shift left click select rocket, hit Control J. So now everything should be controlled by this one modifier here. I might even set the render to free and the viewport to free. If your computer starts lagging, You can set it to a lower number, but I'll set mine to 3 just for a nice finish there. Okay, so that's pretty much the rocket finished. So now what I'm going to do is add some displacement to the flames. Should be a fairly straightforward process. To do that, with the rocket selected, I go to the modifier tab. I'm then going to add modifier, and I'm going to click displace. Now, we added that vertex group earlier, so by going to the modifiers, and we'll select the vertex group here, displace. Now it's only the tips of the flames that are being displaced, so I'm going to add new, and I'll click this button here, go to the texture tab where it says image or movie. I'm going to change that to clouds. I'll then go back to my modifiers. I'm going to change the coordinate system to object. We'll then add an object, shift A, add object, and we'll go empty and sphere. We'll call this displace empty. I'll go to my rocket and we'll select the object, displace empty. So now when I move this empty object, if I hit G, you can see the flames are moving on the tips. We just need to adjust the displace, so maybe I'll give it a level of 0.25. We could probably change the scale, so I might change the scale to 0.5. Now if I grab that object, G, you can see there's a subtle bit of movement there. So now I'm going to select my rocket and we'll rename it to rocket. Mute the displace empty, mute the rocket, and I'll unmute the moon. We'll select the moon and I'm going to hit S10 to scale it up by 10. I'll then unmute my rocket. I'll select my rocket. I'll go into top view and I'll hit G, Y, and we'll drag it on the Y axis to around about there. I'm going to hit numpad 1 to go into front view. I'm going to hit R, Y, 90 to rotate it on the Y axis by 90 degrees. I'm then going to add another empty object. So hit Shift A, add empty, and we'll go for a sphere again. And we'll call this rocket empty. Then go to top view and I'm going to scale that up, hit S. I'm holding control to snap it to the grid, so it's kind of the same size as the rocket. I'll then go into front view, I'll select my rocket and I'm going to shift left click, select my empty, and I'm going to hit Control P, and we're going to set parent object keep transform. So now when I select my empty object and hit rotate, the rocket will move with it. I'm going to open up my timeline down here. I'm going to set the end frame to 240 on frame 1 on my object data properties panel. On the Z rotation for the empty object, I'm going to add a keyframe there. I'll then skip to the last frame, skip one more frame, and then type in 720 for 720 degrees, and then add another keyframe. I then come up here to the top left and I'm going to drag open another window. You might already have one open, and then I'm going to select graph editor. And this contains all the data for the keyframes. That's the Z rotation keyframes we just added there. I'm going to hit N to get rid of that panel. Scale this down. To scale it down, I'm holding control and middle mouse button. And as you can see, we've got a Bezier curve for an interpolation. The animation will start off slow, it will speed up, and then it will slow down towards the end. I'll show you what I mean. So if I push play here, it starts off slow, it speeds up, and then it'll slow down towards the end. We don't want that, we want a consistent speed, so I'm going to hit T instead of Bezier. We're going to choose linear, and now it'll be a consistent speed. So then it should be a perfect loop. We'll add the camera now. I'm going to hit Shift A and we'll add a camera. So with the camera, I'm going to hit G, Y, we'll drag this to around about there. I'm going to set the camera to 24mm. Hit numpad 0 to go into camera view. Make sure that the x-axis is set to 90 degrees. Maybe now we can start adding a base material. Let's just add the moon material first. Let's change this timeline to the shader editor, and on the moon we've got a principled BSDF as a base holder. So I'm going to delete the principled BSDF. We'll probably add that again in a minute. I'm going to go for add converter color ramp, and then Shift A, add converter shader to RGB, and then add shader principal BSDF. So on the principal BSDF, I'm going to turn the roughness up, I'm going to turn the specular up, and I'm going to turn the white value all the way up to 1. I'll plug the BSDF into the shader, I'll then plug the color into the color ramp, and I'll plug the color of the color ramp into the surface and the material output. I'm going to change this to constant. We need to add a sun lamp for this to work. So I'm going to hit Shift A, add light, sun, and maybe we'll go to the sun settings, go to shadows, we're going to turn the shadows on. Maybe we can turn it up to 2. Let's just see what we got so far. Okay, I'll then adjust the rotation on the X and maybe a bit on the Z, just so we can visualize what we've got. I'll then select the moon, and I'm going to add 2 more flags. So one at 0.5, one at 0.75. So for this first one, I'm going to add a yellow. I'm going to copy that, Control C, copy that color, and then Control V. Then I'm going to darken that color. For the middle one, I'm going to add a blue color, so maybe like a lightish blue. And for the end one, we're going to copy this blue color, so Control C, then Control V, and then we're going to make that darker. So now when I grab my sun, I'm going to increase the intensity to maybe about 4. And then if I select the sun and rotate it, you can kind of see what's happening here. So with the sun selected, I'm going to hit 0 on the Z-axis, I'm going to hit 90 on the X-axis. I'm going to open up my timeline here on frame 1 on the rotation. I'm going to add a keyframe for 90 degrees and a keyframe for 0 on the Z-axis. And then I'm going to skip to the last frame and skip one more frame, so it's on frame 241. I'll then type in 450 for the X-axis and 360 for the Z-axis, and add keyframes there. I'm also going to change the interpolation type on both of these. Tap A to select all, and I'm going to hit T for linear interpolation. And what this should do, rotate the sun in a way where it should loop absolutely perfectly. There we go. So now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be animating this rocket, so it looks like the engine's stalling. It's a fairly easy process. So what we'll do is we're going to select this empty object here, which is the rocket empty. I'll just go to camera view. I'm going to add a keyframe on frame 1 on the Y rotation for there, and a keyframe on the Z location, which will also be on frame 1. I'll then drag this down, we'll drag this across. I'll then go into the Z location, and we're going to add a driver. So I'm going to hit N to open up this panel here. We'll go to modifiers, and then I'm going to add a modifier, and we'll choose noise. For the scale, I'm going to type in 15. For the strength, 7.5. We'll go to restrict frame range. So I'm going to click this button here, restrict frame range. We're going to start on frame 1, end on frame 240, and we'll blend in, so we'll ease the animation in over 30 frames and ease it out over 30 frames. Let's just scale this up so we can see what we're doing here. So now if I push play, you should see the rocket go up and down. So now I'm going to copy this modifier, this button here, and we're going to paste it onto the Y rotation, which is this keyframe here. So I'm just going to paste it in, and now if I push play, you're going to see it's rotating completely wrong. So the first thing we're going to do is we'll bring the strength down to, say, 2. We need to invert the rotation. Let's say we'll take it down to minus 2.5. Okay, it's rotating in the right direction, but we need to give it an offset now because we want the rocket to rotate before the up and down movement. So let's change the offset. Maybe we'll take it down to minus 3.5. Let's just see what that does. Okay, that's looking a bit better. Maybe we can increase the scale to 20, and we'll do the same for the Z location. So we change that to 20. I'm going to push play. Maybe we can increase the strength of the Z location. So I'm going to set that to 10. Let's just hide the overlays. I might change the offset slightly more. So with the offset of the rotation, maybe I'll bring that back to minus 3. Let's see what that does. Hide the overlays. Okay, I'm kind of happy with that. Now next, we're going to be taking this rocket object. So we'll select the rocket. We're going to have to apply the rotation. So with the rocket selected, I'm going to hit Control A, and we're going to apply the rotation. So on frame 1, I'm going to add a keyframe here on the X-axis, and then I'm going to skip to the end on 240, and then skip one more to 241, and maybe I'll rotate it by 720 degrees. And then I'll add a keyframe there, and then we want linear interpolation because we want a consistent speed. So I'm going to hit T, and then we'll choose linear. So now when I play the animation, it should be also rotating on that axis. Excellent. So that's pretty much the animation done. we just need to continue on and we'll finish the shaders. So I'm going to collapse this window here, I'm going to increase this window, and we'll change this to shader editor. So with the rocket, we're actually going to have 4 materials. So I'm going to go over to here, and to make things nice and quick, I'm just going to apply the moon material, and then if I click this number 3 here, or this number 3, it will make it its own material. So I'm going to tap that, and then I'm going to type in rocket toon shader number 1. So I'm going to keep this dark blue the same color. I'll probably keep this light blue the same color, but now with this first one, I'm going to give this a nice bright red color. So that's just pure red. I'm going to hit Control C, and then I'm going to paste it into this second flag, Control V, and then I'm just going to darken this down to around about there. We're going to hit the plus button. I'm going to select that rocket toon shader again. I'm going to hit this 2 button to make it its own material, and then we'll rename this rocket toon shader 2. This is going to be the windows. So I'm going to tab into edit mode on the rocket. Let's just change to this view. I'm going to tab into edit mode on the rocket. I'm going to select this face. I'm then going to hit numpad period to zoom into that, and then I'm going to shift select this face. I'm going to shift select these 2 faces, and we're just going to shift select all these windows. Okay, and I also want these sides to be selected, so I'm going to hit Control plus, and that will increase the selection. I'll then select this rocket toon shader number 2 and click assign. Okay, so now I'll go into rendered view. So for this first flag, I'm going to select a nice light blue color. I'm going to copy that, Control C, select the second flag, paste it, Control V, then we'll just darken it down slightly. Then we go into the third flag, Control V, and then I'm going to darken that a bit more. That's our windows. So I'm going to add another material. I'm going to select the rocket toon shader 1. I'm then going to click the 2 button to make it its own material, and we'll rename this one rocket toon shader 3. And this is going to be the nose cone. So the first flag, we're going to make this a bright yellow. We're going to copy that, Control C, and we're going to paste it onto the second flag, Control V, and we're going to darken that slightly. I'm going to keep the blue and the dark blue the same. Select the rocket, go into edit mode. I'm going to select one of these faces, hit Control L, and that will select the whole nose cone, that whole piece. And we'll go to the rocket toon shader 3, and we'll click assign. So now I'm going to add one more material for the thruster. So I'm going to click the plus button. I'm going to select rocket toon shader 1. I'm going to hit this 2 button here, and we'll rename this one toon shader 4. And for this material, I'm going to go completely black, and then I'm going to select it again, and then we'll increase the color till maybe we'll have 0.5 on red, green and blue. Oh, we don't want any alpha on that. I'll then hit Control C, go to the second flag, and then Control V to paste that color in, and we'll darken it down to around about there. Again, we're going to keep the light blue and the dark blue for the shadows. We're going to edit mode. I'm going to select the face on the thruster, hit Control L, and then we're going to go to the rocket toon shader 4 and click assign. Now we're going to add one more material, which is going to be the flames coming out of the back of the rocket. This is going to be a different shader, so it's not a toon shader. So I'm going to click plus. We'll click new here, and we'll just call this flames. So it's going to be a simple shader. We'll delete the principled BSDF. I'm going to click Shift A, and we'll go for shader emission, and then I'm going to add a color ramp. So that's Shift A, converter, color ramp. I'm going to add another color ramp, so we'll just duplicate that one, and then I'm going to add an ambient oculation, which is Shift A, input, ambient oculation. So we'll plug the emission into the surface. Let's just go to edit mode. We're going to select with these vertices. So I'm just going to box select these vertices here, and then going to click Control L to select all the flames. I'll go to the flames material and click assign. I'm going to tab out of edit mode. Maybe we'll give it a strength of 2 for now. We might need to bump it up in a minute. I'm then going to choose this color ramp. I'll plug it into the emission. We're going to change the interpolation type from linear to constant. We're going to want 3 flags in this one. So we'll click the plus button. This flag we'll set to 0.25. So for the first flag, we're going to go for a bright yellow. The second flag, we're going to go for a bright orange. And for the last flag, we'll go for an orange, but a deeper kind of orange, maybe around there. So I'm going to plug the color ramp into this color ramp, and then the color from the ambient oculation we're going to plug into this color ramp. We're going to flip the color ramp, so select this arrow button here, and we'll go flip color ramp. And now what we can do is we'll drag this flag closer to the other one, and that's the shader. So I'm going to hit numpad 0. Maybe I can tweak the color of the moon a bit. going to darken that down slightly, maybe give it a little bit more saturation. For this one, I might take the saturation down slightly, and then if I can get rid of the overlay, I'll take it back to 0. Let's go back to my shader editor. So now we need to add the stars. It's the last element to bring this scene together. So I'm going to hit Shift A, add mesh plane. I then hit RX90 to rotate it on the x-axis by 90 degrees. I'm then going to hit S10 to scale it up by 10. Then maybe S2 to scale it up another 2. We're going to side view, so I'm going to hit numpad 3. Then I'm going to hit GY. We'll drag that down to around about there. Go into camera view. I'm going to scale this up by 2, S2. I'm going to hit Control A to apply the scale. And the material, I'm going to click New. And we'll just rename this to Stars. We're going to rendered view. It's going to be a really simple shader, folks. So I'm going to hit Shift A, shader, emission. And then Shift A, converter, color ramp. And then Shift A, texture, Voronoi. So with the Voronoi texture, we're going to set it to 4D, keep it at F1, we're going to change it to Minkowski. I'll then drag the distance into the color ramp, the color from the color ramp into the emission, and the emission into the material output. We'll change the interpolation type to constant, and we're going to flip the color ramp. So now the black, we're going to turn to a very dark blue. And for the white, we'll turn this up to maybe a slight yellow. Now we just adjust the scale. I'll bring that down to maybe around about there. We can also change how many stars appear in the scene by moving this darker flag here. So now we go over to the material settings over here. And with the star background selected, we're going to select shadow mode. And so now I'm going to go into my timeline editor. I'll go into my object data, and on the Y rotation, I'm just going to add a keyframe there. And then I'll skip to the last frame, we'll skip one more frame, and then I'll type in 360. I'll add another keyframe, open up my graph editor. I'm going to hit N to get rid of the panel, and hit T to change the interpolation type to linear. Now if I get rid of my overlays, push play, we've got a fully loopable animation. For the render settings, we click up here. I've got ambient occultation selected, and the reason I've got that is because we used the ambient occultation for the flame material, so without it you won't get that effect. So make sure ambient occulation is selected. We're going to set the distance to 10 meters, and for shadows I've got mine set to 1024 on the cube size, and cascade size is 2048 with high bit depth and soft shadows. For the output, I've actually got mine set as PNG, which is going to render out a PNG sequence, and then I'll open up all those PNGs into a video editor and render them out as a video. This button here, this will set where you save your PNG sequence or your movie. You just choose a file location that's suited to you and accept that. If you don't want to render out a PNG sequence, you can choose FFmpeg. You go down to encoding, choose a video codec of H.264, medium quality, and when you hit Control F12, it will render out your animation in your file location. I'll set mine back to PNG. The reason why I choose PNG is because if Blender crashes halfway through, then you don't have to render out your animation from the beginning. You can render out from where you left off by going to your timeline, and say it crashes on frame 107, you just set your start frame to 107. So then hit Control F12 to render out your image sequence or your video. So that's it for this tutorial, folks. I hope you enjoyed it. These toon shaders are really easy to make. Just remember, they're directly correlated to the power of your sun. If you found value in this content, please consider liking this and subscribing to my channel. It really helps. Have a great day. Thanks for watching.